Welcome to the JMark Business Innovation Technology Experience.
Welcome everybody. Again, we are today going to be talking about some not really complicated topics, but they're not as fun for a lot of business owners to talk about. Well, it could be fun for some business owners, depending what kind of business you're in. Essentially, the idea of OPEX and CAPEX and IT spending. You know, we're in an unprecedented time right now where a lot of things are happening in the economy with COVID-19, and where there's a lot of changes in spending and a lot of uncertainty in the future. Tom, can you shed some light on this idea and how you see OPEX and CAPEX spending, specifically in terms of IT, of course, how it's playing out over the next 9 to 12 months?
Yeah, it's a really good and not an easy question to answer. You know, we've been pulled into lots of environments where clients say, I just want to move to the cloud. I want to get out of the technology business. I want to be able to write a check every month, and I don't have to worry about server refreshes and don't want to do all of these things. But when we do a 3-year study in terms of the total spend for the organization in a cloud environment or an OPEX environment versus a CAPEX environment, oftentimes we find that it's 30 to 40% more to spend on IT to move into that environment. It's not always that way, but we have to be really careful when we make assumptions that cloud is simpler, it's faster, it's easier, and it's less expensive. Because when we've done the studies, we were brought into an organization not long ago. They asked us to do a 5-year study for them on moving to a hosted cloud environment versus putting on-prem servers and delivering things that way. And literally it was 1/5 of the cost to run in an OPEX environment than it was in a CAPEX environment. And then because of our awesome partnerships, we were able to bring some 0% leasing to the table for the equipment. And while they had a monthly spend associated with it, it was a really low spend at 0%, so there was no cost of money associated with it. And they were able to achieve kind of the best of both worlds. So they got the least expensive long-term total cost of ownership, and they got to spread it out over time so that it had a smaller cash impact on the business. And so the conversation around that, it becomes even more sophisticated when you're buying equipment, and whether you want to take advantage of accelerated depreciation or a 179, and so are you trying to achieve tax benefits? Are you trying to manage cash flow? Are you trying to understand how the OPEX spend or a cloud environment is going to work over a period of time against those same questions? And so it's certainly not an easy scenario, and is business by business. Are you a cash-based business? Is that important? Or are you making money, but you want to handle things on your balance sheet in a certain way? It becomes incredibly complicated to work through. But it like everything else, fundamentally, it becomes a math problem. But if you don't understand the OPEX commitment, especially in a situation like this, if you have committed to a cloud computing environment and there's 5 servers that always have to be running in a cloud environment for your business to operate, you can't shut those down. You're still writing that same check every single month, no matter what. But if you have made a one-time investment in OPEX and you hit these hard times, you don't have those monthly commitments, and so you paid for it. As the business needs to adjust, you don't have IT becoming a drain that's making you choose between, well, I've got IT and I can't let that go, or I've got to fire people. That's a horrible circumstance to be in. And so there's lots of things that need to be considered in this conversation.
Yeah, and I think, you know, in thinking about this, kind of getting into a little bit of psychology here, but there's a story that a lot of people put in their minds, and we all do this with different things. We create these stories in our heads, and what we've seen with a lot of businesses is they create this story in their mind where they have to move to the cloud, or they have to have another server to do this little thing, or another computer to do this little thing. And when you're looking at this situation like we are now, where, you know, the budgets are squeezed a little bit, and where people are balancing things a little bit more carefully, you know, making the right decision is more important than creating a self-fulfilling story, a self-fulfilling prophecy in your mind that is only going to make things worse.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's so many times, like you said, where we've gone in and where we've had difficult conversations with people because they're like, I want to move to the cloud. I want to move to the cloud. I want to move to the cloud. It's like, well, okay, well, we can help you move to the cloud, but it's going to cost you a lot more than this thing. And it's just it's about getting the right services. And it's also a little bit of it's really frustrating to me because there's a lot of MSPs out there over the last 10 years that have used this idea of OPEX versus CAPEX in their sales strategy. And the idea is that they're pushing the OPEX and saying all of the benefits of it and predictable budgets and all these things, which isn't a lie per se, but oftentimes it's used to entrap you in a situation that you can't get out of. You know, there's various vendors out there or competitors out there that we've gone up against with that their MO is they take a company and put them all into the cloud. And then they sell them little services. Oh, and then there's this service, and then there's this service. And they don't true up the dates. So they're all at different end dates, the terms. So even if you wanted to get out of the cloud agreement, you couldn't get out of this other agreement for another 6 months. And then there's this other agreement that has another 3 months on it. And then this other agreement has another 5 months on it. And it's maddening to IT companies that are like, I mean, not IT companies, with clients that, prospects that just, they're stuck. And it's difficult.
I think, Todd, one thing I just want to add a spin on what you said about we put these stories in our minds about this. And I think one of the things you just illustrated with the end of that is what I was going to add is that a lot of times we don't put those in our head. Advertising puts it in our heads that this is the answer. This is how you're going to save money. And it's really simple. There's no complex conversation to be had. It's just, here's your answer. And I think the important thing goes back to what you were talking about, Tom, is that it is a complex, and you need to have a partner that's going to sit down with you and say, here's a complex situation. Here's the math. Here's the math on this side. Here's the math on this side. Let me show it to you to show you the numbers we ran and how we came to this decision about what's best for your company.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about getting to the truth. It's not a perception. It's not a marketing story or a spin that's been fed to us from that perspective. It's what's the fundamental truth of the environment. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that cloud is bad. In fact, I believe that every organization needs to be in a hybrid environment where they're taking advantage of some cloud resources and some local resources. That is the best of both worlds. What's important is to identify where and how to put those resources so that you maintain what I describe as CFO control. When you end up in a pure cloud environment, the CFO loses control, because if you're cranking away on the servers and it's up there, it's like a utility. It's spinning the meter.